small and medium-sized enterprises. Continuing, we finally finished up with the barriers. So yes, there was some really good greenfield discussions, but then we came into some of the barriers, and these are apparent, and this is something we need to get into. Private sector, limited access to circular goods top the list due to a lack of circular supply and value change, the accessibility of sustainable circular products, and overall lack of logistics. Also, there was a mention of the price points. When you look at the supply chain, the cost of taking material and embedding it into your manufacturing process is really expensive. And that's really hard to get in front of management to make a rationalization to be circular at this stage. Respondents also felt that companies' management did not buy in yet to circular, that there was not the proof of concept or the proof of profit, and that there also was not necessarily incentives for middle managers to spend time and resources on it, as there was no company-wide mandate. And I'll preface this, yet. Public and social sector, there was some really, really honest dialogue here as well. The theme of racism and accountability had the highest number of respondents, painting a clear picture that the current system is racist and inequitable in the current state. That systemic racism is apparent. It's also really inequitable in the current context. Now, I want to make a note here, folks. This is common among all cities. And so it's not necessarily calling out Cleveland specifically, but it is calling out the fact that there is a definite perception that systemic inequities and systemic racism exist in all aspects of the communication chain. And that, again, we heard earlier, the circular economy could potentially be an antidote for that. Also, what was interesting here too was the theme of counterproductive and stagnant mindsets. And what that essentially means is looking at both citizens and governments, looking at this idea of short-termerism. What new policy are we going to latch onto for the short term, but not really thinking through the middle and long-term transformations and it just dying out? How can we look at getting rid of that instant gratification mindset and work collectively to build something stronger and better? And this is actually one of the main points of the workshops of what we're trying to find out, of really looking at a future state where we look at circular economy, answering some of these questions. So there's the share outs on the workshops that came out. We felt from a data perspective and from an engagement perspective was really powerful. And we hope to capture some of those insights as we move forward. Now what I'm going to do is take a second, pause, and I'm going to hand it over to Tamara and the Metabolic team to share out the wonderful data insights that they have regarding setting the stage moving forward. So Tamara, the floor is yours.
Thank you, John. Very happy to be here today. I'm happy that we can make it due to the time difference. So it's nice to meet you all, folks. The big reveal. So this has really been building up. So let's get into it. Can we go to the next one, John? Yeah, so just a bit of framing on what we did to actually get some insights here. So what we do at Metabolic is we want to, one part of our methodology is to always understand where we are, because if we don't know where we are, it's very difficult to go somewhere else, right? So really getting to that future that is sustainable. So in order to do so, we evaluated together, of course, with Pixera and the Great Lakes region, evaluated existing waste strategies, policy analysis. We gathered some strengths and weaknesses, also, of course, looking at the results that John just presented. And we also collaboratively selected some focus areas, which I will present later. And we did a material flow analysis. John, can we go to the next? Yeah, so before we dive in, just to iterate again, when we talk about a sustainable future or a circular economy, achieving that, we don't want to only talk about waste. We really want to make sure that we look at that holistically. That's also something that was discussed in the last workshop, looking at materials, but also thinking about how that relates to energy, water, biodiversity, and of course, human society, cultural value, health, and other types of value. And most importantly, always looking through the lens of inclusivity. So making sure that one solution for materials doesn't affect anything else negatively. So to avoid burden shifting. Can we go to the next slide? Perfect. Yeah, so selecting some focus areas for Cleveland. So we did that first landscape analysis, and then today we're diving a bit deeper. We're selecting a couple of sectors that we really want to dive into. That's to make sure that we allocate time and resources to these topics most relevant. So really starting somewhere. that we build upon the momentum that is already there. So indeed, like Divya said in the beginning, thinking about existing programs, thinking about existing stakeholders, and building on the foundation that has been set over the last decades. And then also thinking about creating a feasible roadmap, something that is tangible, that is ready to get implemented. So that's really why we want to focus the conversation a bit today. John, can we go to the next one? And there they are, the 4 focused areas that we are going, this is first part of the big reveal, the couple of focus areas that we are going to discuss. Today, we're focusing on circular manufacturing and the built environment. So stimulating low impact material use, clean energy and material symbiosis, looking at how different companies can work together to make the most out of, maybe someone else's waste is a resource for another company. And then also the circular built environment, developing a built environment to support socioeconomic development while minimizing environmental impact and ensuring reusability at end of life. Now, this is what we're focusing on today in the workshop tonight that is more focused on the public sector. We're also diving in deep on remediating pollution and valorizing, or actually getting more value out of resources. Can we go to the next one? Yeah, so perfect, thank you. Circular manufacturing, so stimulating low impact material use, clean energy and material symbiosis. So for each of these focus areas, I'm gonna walk through a couple of the insights that we got out of the material flow analysis and a couple of opportunities and then some examples. Now we have a lot of information here, so I'm not gonna discuss everything because then we really wanna hear from you all instead of me talking. So we'll cover the most important points, and of course in the breakout sessions we can dive in deeper and we can talk about it in detail. Can we go to the next one, please? Briefly, what is a material flow analysis? Maybe some of you have seen one before, but what we see in a material flow analysis, on one side, all the materials that go in, then we see what kind of users we have in the city. So think about government, commercial and organizations and industry and households. And then on the output side, we see things that come out of that process. So this is really a way of looking at the economy. So energy, water, materials going in, and then indeed emissions, water, wastewater, and actual waste coming out. Next one, please. And here we go, the material flow analysis for Cleveland. Yeah, so this is a very complex diagram. We will share all of this by the end of the session for you to get a good look, because it's quite a complex one. So at the left side, again, you see all these different types of resources going into the city, energy and building materials. In the middle, we see the different types of entities or stakeholders using it. So industrial, commercial, residential, transportation, government, and streetlights. And then on the right side, we see everything that is coming out. So what we see in the bubbles, it's 2 leverage points. So we use these points to identify where we can make most impact on achieving a more sustainable future. So here I would like to focus your gaze on industries and the waste materials, and then we can go to the next slide, please. Yeah, so highlighted insights when it comes to circular manufacturing. At the left, we see the division of carbon emission for the entire of Cleveland per user. So one of the insights that we can get from a material flow analysis is that 55% of all emissions on a yearly basis in the city comes from industry. So industry is a good place to start when we want to reduce that. Another thing that we see when you look at the bottom left is the waste generation in Cleveland. And we see that also 48% of all waste is generated by industry versus 34% by commercial, smaller businesses, and then 18% by residents. So if we want to think about how to divert our waste or reduce, industry is a good place to start again. We see that steel production, of course, is a very big industry in Ohio and also in Cleveland. There's around 12% of all residents in Cleveland are employed there. One thing that I really want to make a note of that is a key element here is that we don't always have all the data. So the way that this model is built up is that we've used many different sources, but of course, when it comes to industry, we do not always have all the insight on the actual material waste flows that are produced. So this is something that is also a leverage point for us. And with that, I mean, this is a great place to start. If we want to use more, or if we want to do more with our waste, it's really great to know what that actual flow is. So that's a real leverage point here. And then it's good to know that Cleveland is really a great economic foundation for the circular economy to land due to its infrastructure and transportation and distribution infrastructure that is all in place. Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, so just some highlighted opportunities very quickly. Indeed, the emissions, thinking about how we can reduce these synergies. So what we're talking about here is, are there industries that could collaborate to actually exchange resources? Is there a waste for one industry that can be a material or a resource for another? Green jobs, thinking about how we can tap into that workforce, and reporting and transparency. It was also one of the points that was made in the first workshop. Can we think about how we can set bold goals for industry, and also think about how we can report on our waste flows? And then finally, lowering the demand of energy. Can we go to the next slide, please? Just a few examples of, and again, this will send out, of best practices from all over the world. District heating in Scotland. I think Kallenberg, this is one, actually, like, if you are interested in this, I would very much invite you to Google Kallenberg, because it's an amazing project. It's about industrial symbiosis, and it also really explains a lot about how this can work on on an industrial site. So that's a really amazing one. Peel Pioneers is on a smaller scale, utilizing unavoidable food waste to actually make a lot of materials out of that, and then training programs for industrial symbiosis, because if we want to work on these types of solutions, we also need the workforce to be able to tap into them. So training programs. Next slide, please, and we'll go to built environment. Great, so developing a built environment to support the socio-economic development while minimizing its environmental impact and ensuring reusability by the end of life. And what we mean with that is that we don't demolish buildings and then send the materials to landfill, but do something better with it. Next slide, please. Again, the Sankey diagram. What we focus on now is the building materials on the bottom left. What is going into the buildings in Cleveland? What are we actually building our buildings with, right? So resources. And then also, again, looking at the waste materials. What is being demolished and what happens to those materials? Next slide, please. So what we see here, and again, that word valorization, what we mean by that is getting more value out of. So we are currently not entirely sure what happens to all of the materials that come out of demolition. So that's like, we have tried to use our models to get the best picture out of it, but that's definitely something that we would love more insight in. One of the insights we also get is that there's lots of vacant land in Cleveland, and that's an opportunity. So there's extensive vacant land. Maybe that's also something that we can tie to the homelessness numbers that the city has. And then finally, thinking about impacts, there's limited binding policy on the impact of used materials. So it's interesting to think about how we can actually push that forward, where like, how can we make sure that we do more with those materials that free up? And then when we talk about what materials those are, if you look at the left, the consumption of construction material, you see that 64% of all materials used in Cleveland is concrete. Now, concrete has a very heavy impact on the environment, as some of you might know, and not only on carbon emissions, but also in terms of water and energy use. So this is a really interesting leverage point. Maybe we should all go build with wood, or maybe there's, right? Maybe there's other resources we can use. So lots of interesting insights there. If we go to the next slide. Opportunities. Yeah, so here's just a bit of a general overview of some things that we saw. So first one, can we leverage urban developments to increase household income? Think about new ways of organizing our built environment through community land trusts or decentralized energy systems. Can we come up with low impact construction strategies? So indeed, like wood, and also implement the policies to decrease the impact of that. So thinking about how can we really create the frameworks to make this possible. Collecting data for urban mining. So urban mining means that we get more insight on the material flows in the built environment. And then finally, green procurement guidelines. And this I can explain by the next slide. So if we go to, yeah, perfect. So one of the things that we did in the city of Amsterdam is have tendering guidelines in which the city really stimulated all new developments to use bio-based materials and to use new energy guidelines and whatnot. So the city can really play a very big role in not only for their own buildings, but also for tendering guidelines to really make sure that we transition to that circular built environment. And then there are some other best practices here. One of them is a circular built environment hub, because if you have more secondary materials, it's not always this, like you deconstruct a building, it's not only tomorrow, at the same time always. So you might not be able to reuse those materials tomorrow. So we need to store them. That's where Circular Built Environment Hub comes in. Material passports. Can we also have a place where we document the types of materials that we put in a building so that when we want to take it apart, we know exactly what's in it? And then cooperative living. The Water is a project that is actually run by a couple of colleagues of us that are really reinventing the way that we live together in Amsterdam. So that's a pretty impressive one as well. Again, we'll share these slides so you can click around after the session. Can we go to the next slide? I'm going to briefly run over these because I really want to make sure that we have enough time to dive deep into the focus areas today. But just briefly, getting more value from resources, so diverting the valorizable fraction. This is about focusing on waste that is now being sent to landfill that could be used to a higher value. So next slide, please. Here we look at waste materials and the processing in the diagram. So if we go to the next one, we have some diagrams. Yeah, this is a nice one. I like the top one. I think we showed it last time as well. Residents in Cleveland produce way less waste per capita than the average US citizen. So that's great, like applause for Cleveland. But still, it's much more than the global average. So there's still a step to take there. Now, if we look at the mixed waste composition, we know that 96% of collected household waste is being sent to landfill. 31% of this is organic waste. So there's definitely other stuff we can do with that. And of that, 17% is food waste. And then 14% is yard waste. So there's different fractions that we can utilize there. Urban agriculture, food waste and composting infrastructure, lots of initiatives underway. Again, Rust Belt Riders, Cuyahoga Composting Center, how can we scale these initiatives up? How can we really make sure that we build on what is already there? And then transparency, again, we don't always know what comes out of the industry. So this is also a question to this group, like more data, we love it, so that we really know what is out there. And then next slide, please. Again, some opportunities. Circular entrepreneurship, like stimulating local entrepreneurship there, smart connections. Can we think about different opportunities that we see and connect them to these hotspots out of the diagram? Monitoring commercial and organic waste. I know that we have Reaply here that also works in that space. So thinking about how we can really connect up and make the most out of this and get these insights that we need to close the loops. Next one, please. Yeah, let's dive into remediating pollution, the last focus area. Again, more time to dive into these insights after we send the presentation and tonight in the other session as well. Remediating pollution, air quality is a big thing in Cleveland. Like, how can we make the air better? Polluted areas and green space. Cleveland has quite some brownfields as a result of past and present industry. Can we use remediating efforts such as nature-based solutions to clean up that soil and combine it again to the vacant lots that might be there? Water pollution, how can we limit point source pollution and output of all industries? And then also, of course, the lead pollution. If we go to the next one. Some highlighted opportunities here as well. Maximize use of vacant land, bioremediation practices. Work together. I think is one of the themes that is, of course, like in all of these focus areas, but also thinking about nutrient recovery, because although wastewater might sound like we don't want to do anything with it, and it might also not smell like we want to do anything with it, but there's a lot of valuable nutrients in there. Phosphorus, nitrogen, we need that to grow food. So can we do something with it? And then climate resiliency. Can we make sure that we have, that we increase green spaces, not only for climate change mitigation efforts, but also for urban heat island and stormwater runoff. Final slide, please. Yeah, so these are just a couple of, and I think these are nice to mention because they also tap into the built environment focus area a little bit. The Keuvel is our living lab here in Amsterdam. It's a tender by the local government that gives us a 10-year use of a brownfield space to really make that into a social hub for local companies to thrive and create this space for for them to experiment with new circular technologies, showcase. And then we also think about nature inclusive constructions, looking at different resources. Can we actually, instead of impacting with the built environment, store carbon in our buildings by using natural sources and bio-based materials? And food production, aquaponics in Vienna. Can we think about how to use these vacant lands? Can we come up with food production for our neighborhoods? So a couple of examples there. I'm sorry, I talked way too long, but there's just a lot of exciting things coming out of this analysis. So up for our working session now.
Ooh, wow. Okay, sorry, but a little bit of round of applause. I mean, that was kind of good on the data share outs. Just really good insights. I'm sitting there like a little kid going, oh my God, yeah, right there. That's amazing. So thank you so much, team, for putting that together. And I think what was really interesting is that, again, talking about what we already see in Cleveland, a lot of this we see kind of it existing, right? We have aquaponics in Cleveland, if I know correctly. We have some of these examples already happening. So again, Cleveland showing off its innovation and being on the same page as Amsterdam, which Amsterdam is generally perceived as being the circular city in kind of the world. So yay, good stuff. So thank you, Metabolic team, for the engagement. And also just some really good news. We're right on time right now, which feels really good. So I'm happy about that. I'm sure all of you are happy about that as well. And a couple of points before we go forward into these working sessions. We will have time after our working sessions to take a collective breath and have overall questions. What we like to do to keep the engagement going is we like to get you into your working sessions, to have that deep engagement for 40 minutes, to get out the insights. I'm going to go through some run of shows of what we want in those working sessions here in a second, but I want to pause for a second that when you come out of those, there will be time for us to answer questions. There'll be time to engage any questions that you want to have for Metabolic's team or for Divya or for the city of Cleveland. We're open to those. And of course, throw those in the chat too, and we can get that for you. The other thing I want to highlight again before we go in here is that this information that you see now, you have access to. So we'll make sure that you're able to have that information, you're able to dive deep into it, and then we can all try to answer any questions that you might have moving forward. So now let's get into putting it on you folks. Now it's your turn to shine. It's your turn to engage. I know that there's a couple of you folks already pinging going, I have stuff to say. Great. We want to hear what your stuff you have to say. Let's dive into some guidelines. So we have 2 breakout sessions moving forward. We have one around heavy industry manufacturing, and then we have one on the built environment. Each group will have a lead facilitator and then have a team member there to help facilitate and capture notes. Just so you can give transparency and open context of the conversation, we will be recording each of these breakout sessions because you're going to be giving us a lot of information, and to say that we can type that fast and capture it would be false. So we're going to be recording each of those conversations to ensure that we're coming back and parsing the information and sharing that out and putting it in our data moving forward. 2, I think the one thing that's really key that when we get out of this is that we have time to answer those 4 questions. What's really important is that with these breakout groups, you're looking at anywhere from one breakout group having 10 folks to the built environment potentially having 20 folks. Make sure that your voice is heard. We're not going to have rounds of introductions because that will take up a lot of time. Instead, what we want to do is jump right into the session itself, start asking those questions, engage you. So feel free, if you're an introvert or you don't feel like talking so much and that's not your space, we respect that. Write it in the chat, please. So make your voice heard the way that you feel comfortable to do that. Simultaneously, some of you are more passionate than others to just have that buzz. I know I'm the type of person that falls in that category. Limit yourself if you can a little bit. Get your questions out there, but please be kind and let others speak as well and let their voices be heard too. So on that note, I'm going to pause my screen share for a second, and then poor Divya has to become our tech person. And so Divya, the floor is yours.
15 today. Perfect, Kathy. That's indeed, that was my first task to press record, but it's already done. So it's, thank you for that. Hey, we are 16 people. Although we don't have too much time, I do think it's actually really nice to do a very quick round of introductions. Just name and maybe the company or organization you're representing today, just to get a bit of an idea of why we're here. And we can start, Daniel.
My name is Daniel. I work at Metabolic in the Circular Cities team, and very excited to work on this project with you all.
Yeah, I'm Tamara, also Metabolic, and I would like to pass to Matt.
Hi, I'm Matt Russell. I work at Reaply. We're working on making everything visible and therefore more valuable in a circular economy.
Who would you like to pass to?
Let's go with Tina Brake.
Hi, thanks. Tina Brake. I work for the Housing Authority for CMHA and sustainability.
Great. Who would you like to pass to, Tina?
How about Anand?
Thank you, Tina. This is Anand Natarajan, Energy Manager for the Mayor's Office of Sustainability, City of Cleveland. I'm going to pick Cindy.
Hi, I'm Cindy C. Segoy, the Executive Director of the Cleveland 2030 District. We engage commercial buildings to reduce their energy, water, and transportation emissions. And I will throw it to Linda.
Hi, Linda Warren. I'm the Senior Vice President of Placemaking for Cleveland Neighborhood Progress. We're a local intermediary, although I think most people know that about us. I want to personally thank all the people from the construction industry who came today that I personally reached out and harangued. So thank you for responding and showing up. We're really grateful. And I'll pass it to Arn.
Hi, I'm Arn Goldman. I'm a registered architect and I'm the Director of Business Development for Marouse Brothers Construction. I'm a lead AP person, and Marouse is one of the most active full service builders in this region.
Who would you like to pass to?
I'm going to pass it to Daniel.
Hi, everybody. Daniel Brown with Rust Belt Riders. We're an organics service provider and manufacturer of soil. We're also worker-owned. And I will pass it to Jessica.
Oh, Jessica, you're muted.
Sorry, you missed everything. I'm Jessica Davis. I'm the Builders Exchange, and we buy and sell construction material and architectural salvage. We're community wealth builders by providing a platform and a hub to divert waste and have individuals make money by bringing it in. And I will pass to Christopher from Red House. Oh.
Hi, this is Mauer. I'm an architect based in Cleveland. I'm currently coming to you from Namibia. Hopefully the connection's okay. In addition to doing architectural design, we're developing materials that use circular economy and organisms to actually create the materials. I can't see the names. Could somebody pick for me?
Let me see. Who have we not heard? Yeah. Sorry, Kate.
Dominic and Key State, which is Andrew.
I can go first. My name is Kate Gasparo. I'm the Director of Urban Strategy and Innovation at Bedrock. We are a large property owner, commercial property and residential property owner in the downtown Cleveland area. And I think almost everyone has gone, but Linda, you were pointing out a couple more people.
Yes, Dominic, do you want to go next? And then Andrew with Key State, and then I think Kathy might be the last one.
Yes, Dominic, Ozan Construction Company.
Thank you. Great.
Andrew Gottlieb, Key State Homes.
And then Kathy, I think you're up.
Kathy Lenz, City of Cleveland, Mayor's Office of Sustainability.
And I just noticed Kim. Kim, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, Kim Kimlin. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Cuyahoga Land Bank.
Amazing. What a great group we
and
have.
Did we get Chris Tyus? Sorry.
Chris, we can't hear you, Chris.
I could introduce Chris. Chris actually started an organization called A Piece of Cleveland, probably, I don't know, 15 years ago now. We hired him, Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, to work on some of the earliest deconstruction projects in the city of Cleveland. And even though he is no longer actively doing that work, he is still very engaged in this kind of sustainability work. And anyone who's ever been to our offices at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress would see some of his work. We have a barn door over our kitchen that came from a deconstructed building. And so a lot of it, many restaurants in Cleveland have tables and walls and things made from a piece of Cleveland work. And they used to have certifications, so you knew where the plate thing came from. Okay, that's too long of an intro, Chris, but a lot of respect for you and all you've done.
Amazing. So I think we have everyone now, and I'm really impressed with the variation diverse group we have today. I'm really working on progressing that built environment. So what we like to do now is really have a bit of an open discussion centered about a couple of questions. First, we'd like to focus on because we listed out a couple of these opportunities, but of course we want to do a real deep dive, and we already heard a couple of front runner initiatives or really cutting edge endeavors that are happening in Cleveland. But I'd like to start with, are there any initiatives that you haven't heard us mention today that we should really be aware of? What is really, I see Chris having his hand. Yeah, there you go.
Does this work now? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Sorry about that earlier.
Chris, we lost you. Oh, there you go.
Can you hear me now? Ridall Partnership. It's RIDALL. Ridall, they've got, I don't know how many hoop houses and greenhouses. They have an aquaponics section of their development. They're doing composting, and they're also doing workshops in the communities. And so it's very much like there's I can't remember exactly where they're located, but they're in the city of Cleveland, and they've been doing this for maybe 20 years as well.
Amazing. That's a great initiative for us to look into. Is there anyone else who would like to share an initiative on the built environment?
Yes, it's Arn. I think the city of Cleveland has taken the lead compared to other cities in requiring for projects where they're granting tax abatements. They require those projects that are in housing to meet the requirements of enterprise green communities, which sets some sustainability standards that include waste recycling. It's enterprise green communities parallels LEED Silver certification.
So that's working really well. So if we talk about what is working and what would we like to see more of, that's something these tax abatements work, the green enterprise communities. Great, Arne, thank you. Christopher.
Yeah, I don't know if we're allowed to pitch our own work here, but in the built environment, we're doing some research with folks at MIT and other places. In Namibia here, we're turning encroacher bush into building materials. And in Cleveland, we have a project called Biocycler that actually takes waste building materials and recycles them using similar methods that use organisms to bind and repair to not only recycle, but to remediate the materials. So
great.
I thought I'd throw that out there.
Yeah, no, that's great. So bio-based materials and really pushing that forward. Is there anyone else that knows or, go ahead.
Well, there's an initiative called CleBuilds. That's a new initiative that's been formed by the Cleveland Building Trades and Construction Council and the Construction Employers Association. And the purpose of CleBuilds is to identify, it's a pre-apprenticeship training program that's targeting young people in the city of Cleveland, African-Americans, Hispanics, to bring them more specifically in the building trades. So we see the workforce shortages, and Arn can tell you and other builders that, we're begging people, and trying to find, I don't understand people that aren't interested in $30 an hour jobs and then the whole culture. So CleBuilds is different because it's trying to start earlier and, address the cultural aspects of the building trades, and the unions, we all know they're finally, and I think they're being forced to change their ways because of the workforce shortage and because the all of these issues are knocking on their door.
Mm.
I've got to go. The only thing I would say with respect to a circular economy in terms of thinking about the issue is to think about it as a spherical economy.
Okay.
A circle is a two-dimensional structure that works if there is a basic homogeneous group of people. That, you know, there have been references to Europe and some of the very progressive things that can happen in countries where the identity of the people is very similar, because there's a far greater acceptance of policy when everyone has a very clearly identified common interest. Particularly in Cleveland, I think when you're looking at Cleveland, because you're going to start seeing, I think, more and more emphasis on the fact that it's America's poorest city, and the recent, and there's framing the mayor's race as who wants the poorest city. So I think in terms of thinking about this issue about circularity, I think it's I don't know, spherularity or whatever.
That's a real
but
tongue
I think a sphere allows you to a sphere allows you to accommodate much greater disparities in different areas, and it allows you to accomplish. So when I don't know much about this, Linda gave me my reading materials I didn't get through, but I think a sphere captures this because it allows you to deal with this in a more complex manner, and it allows you to accommodate more differences. Yeah,
and that's definitely something that is a key element of this roadmap. So maybe, that sounds like a really creative framing of the circular economy. Thank you for that.
I have another comment. I don't know if this is the appropriate place for it, but I think we have to cure or solve for institutional incompetency, because too often we say something is systemically racist, and I think it's more institutionally incompetent. I think when you cure in the city of Cleveland, when you cure for institutional incompetency, what will be left will be systemic racism. But too often we make this be about something other than incompetency. And for instance, the whole recycling program, which has been well publicized on the local media outlets, is a complete failure in the city of Cleveland, which I don't even know if that's fair or not, but there is clearly something that's going on that's institutionally incompetent about that program. And I think,
so this is indeed like a really important point, and I think at tonight's session, definitely on the recycling and getting more value out of the resources, I think there will be a deeper dive into that. So definitely very important to take note of. I do want to move the conversation a little bit towards the built environment and getting into those materials themselves. Cindy's doing some self-promoting, Cindy. But thank you for that, Arne. That's a really important point. And Kathy, you're noting all of that down. That's great. I see a question in the chat. Some self-promoting from Cleveland 2030 with commercial buildings. So this is indeed, these are awesome initiatives. Tonight's workshop, I'm on a very different time zone. It's 6 here or 5 here. So that's why I'm referring to tonight. Indeed, this afternoon, apologies for that. So what I'd like to do now is we've heard a couple of initiatives. Now, there's quite a lot that needs to happen, right? Until we have the entire built environment in a circular, more sustainable way. So there's a couple of routes. Either we can do more, right? Like new initiatives, or we can scale up. So what I'd like to hear from all of you is what is, like we talked a little bit about like what initiatives are working. I'm also looking to find out what is challenging, right? Like what barriers do you run into when you think about using more secondary materials? Maybe we want to introduce material passports for the built environment. What kind of like, how can we get more insights into secondary materials and think about like what is in these buildings? Are there any thoughts on that? What are you running into with your initiatives? What are barriers there?
I have a thought on this one.
Okay.
Yeah, please.
One of the thoughts is that I know I work really well with architects and demolition crews to divert waste, and specifically, people who are doing abatements. And I know in other cities, like New York, that there's tax credits that go directly to the people who are diverting the waste. So I think that because our tipping fees are so cheap in Cleveland, where is the incentive to weigh materials that you're diverting and to get actual cash for just taking the time and energy to divert it?
That's a great point, because it does cost us more money to separate waste on site. So, I mean, if it's a LEED certified project or Enterprise Green Communities project, we have to do it anyway. We have to separate it. But if it isn't, what's our incentive? If we're doing a commercial office building, why should we do that?
You know, one of the things, Arnie, is I work with, like I'll go into a building, there was a project with Bielowski's, and it's the magnet project over on 55th and Huff. And they brought me they wanted to save some of the materials for reuse in their building. And then I was able to identify on the front end material that I could take out. However, my business took it out, which isn't what we typically do, but that was a great way to divert a bunch of waste. And what I learned, and I don't know how this is something that needs more investigation, is that places like Kurtz Brothers who do the separation, they get the credit. They could potentially get the credit for separating the waste, some kind of tax incentive. But you would probably know more about that, and it's just something to investigate, like who gets the tax credit when they're diverting the waste.
That's an excellent question. Sorry, go ahead.
We don't get it.
Oh, sorry.
And so would you see a value? I mean, like, would you get, I guess in a way, right, it's known that if you're diverting ferrous material, you can have access to the value of that material, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the hardest things for us, one of the big challenges is concrete and masonry debris, right? It's first of all, it's very expensive. That is very expensive to. It sucks to take it to a landfill because it's bad for the environment, and it takes up so much material, so much space. But for us, the real solution, we did it at St. Luke's when we demoed a medical office building in a parking garage, is to crush it on site if you have that ability to, and you reuse the material if you need to. However, on a lot of urban sites, you don't have the opportunity because there's no place to put all that crushed material. Plus, local residents typically don't like crushing operations because it's perceived as dirty. So there's a balancing act, but the best thing to do with concrete is to crush it and reuse it. It's very reusable somewhere. It's a question of stockpiling it and crushing it on site. It's not when we have to pay somebody to truck it. All they're doing is they're trucking it someplace and they're making the money from the crushing operation.
Yeah.
So there has to be, if there was a way to incentivize contractors to on-site handle that, you're saving all the emissions from trucking it off-site, which is extensive, hundreds and hundreds of trucks. I mean, so there's got to be a way to handle masonry and concrete debris on-site through crushing and reuse, and offsetting that cost somehow.
Yeah.
I wanted to chime in if I could. So we work to help businesses and organizations divert their food scraps. And one of the things that we're increasingly aware of is that diverting food scraps for the sake of diverting food scraps is not economically viable, but we instead need to be creating markets for that compost. And so one of the things that we're in early talks of doing is working with some of the institutional accounts that we work with, universities in town.
I think we lost you for a moment, Daniel, or is that our internet?
I think
I didn't hear the last part.
Daniel, we lost you at the end. Did you finish your thought?
Oh, sorry. Could you repeat that last point you made?
Yeah, we're trying to create markets for circular products, and large institutions and large landholders have significant landscaping needs. So the degree to which we could embed our products into their landscaping specs has a multitude of benefits, not least of which allows us to capture more food waste because we have a inflow and outflow. If we just have inflow, we're in a really bad situation, and we will lose money over time and go out of business. But if we have markets, then we're golden. And then sort of like embedded in all of that is like, we don't have nearly enough infrastructure to compost all of the food waste, or like even a statistically insignificant percentage of food waste regionally. And so we need to properly allocate land and resources to build the infrastructure that will create the products, that will create the jobs, that will create these economic systems.
Yeah, I can imagine that that's definitely something that is true indeed for organic waste, and is also true for for building, but that's very similar. Yeah.
Yeah, I say chicken and egg all of the time, and it's getting nauseating.
Yeah, but this maybe is a very like this could also be ground for collaboration. I can imagine, and also thinking about because one of the things that I'm hearing in both of these or in all of the comments that were made just now is kind of like the need for storage as well, right? Because if we can store something at a location that is makes sense logistically, then also you could limit the truck trips. There could be like, is there any building hubs in Cleveland, or are these types of storage and treatment facilities there already? Does anybody know about?
I mean, Jessica's the closest, but it's not what you're describing. It's more just this, she captures things through the building exchange, which isn't the same as what you're describing. I don't want to, Andrew, I was going to say, I don't want to put you on the spot as I put you on the spot. So I guess I do want to put you on the spot and ask if you can share, because I think the approach you're taking to single family new construction, which limits the construction waste to a 5-gallon bucket, is pretty unusual. And I don't know if there's opportunities for replication there.
Yeah, so, you know, I think, you know, one of the reasons why we're able to do that is we're packaging these homes precision cut, straight from a factory. We're able to, you know, use some of the concrete waste as a base for our foundations, as we always do. So when we're limiting waste, it's because, you know, we're having structures that are built prescription wise to a certain T, where there's not a lot of questions really on the job. Hence, we're able to build these single family homes with, you know, 1 skilled labor and 4 unskilled laborers. So I think, you know, having, you know, a certain formula or model and using what is, you know, coming to us, you know, maybe from a mill or whatnot, you know, we're able to use less waste. On our jobs, we do recycle our lumber no matter where the build is. So it can go towards cardboard, it can go towards pencil shavings for animal cages. These are really important values to us that we've been doing over the last 7 years since I, you know, came on board after grad school. And we're always looking to innovate. So besides using the concrete as a base for our driveways and foundations, we're taking porcelain brick, we're taking scraps of remnants from quartz countertops or granite, and we're also putting that in our mix as well prior to, you know, putting our foundations in. So, you know, we're recycling the metal sheeting, you know, for our air ducts and whatnot. So, you know, these are important things that we really value when it comes to building, and any way we could improve that, we're constantly looking to do something like that. And I would say that our firm and our partners align with that.
So you're doing that. I mean, that's cool because you're doing that because it's part of your company's culture. You know, while we have, you know, I'm the head of the green team here at Maru's, but we tend to do this on projects where we have to, as opposed to, and we are very creative on, you know, we panelize our projects, you know, that are wood frame and everything. And we find a lot of ways to minimize waste and we separate our waste and all that. But you've taken it many steps further. into cardboard, which, we put in a special dumpster, but, then it still has to go through the process of recycling and everything. So you're taking this to the next level, and it seems like it's cultural. So I would say that there has to be an amount of cultural and educational process so the contractors are aware of some of the things that you do, and to decide if they can effectively incorporate it into their culture and into their processes. Because for you, it's second nature at this point.
Yeah.
A company like ours, it's more if we do it when it's mandated, and we're very good at it when it's mandated. But why do we only do it when it's mandated?
So I say this to anybody who's in the construction industry: if they ever want to come out to a job and see how we do things, is if we can build greener homes throughout Cleveland, no matter who the builder is, I'm all for it, and I'm all about collaborating on that.
I want to see that.
Yeah.
I think we're at a unique, because of the supply chain logistics and material shortage issue, and this is something that has nothing to do with labor shortage or labor diversion or anything. There's a unique opportunity for companies that can source recycled, reused materials right now, because we're having trouble getting a lot of different kinds of things: showers, bathtubs, a lot of plumbing fixtures as an example, countertops, whatever, stuff that we're having trouble getting. I think, there needs to be better public relations marketing work for companies that offer, these resources to the construction community, like Jessica's resources, for instance. If it needs to be better publicized, and it can be done at the city level, because, I can think of 3 projects right now where I need to get our project managers in touch with Jessica, for instance, because and other such companies, because while they're not top of mind to us, they probably should be, especially now, rather than telling our clients they're going to have to wait 6 months, their project's delayed because we can't get stuff from overseas right now because it's sitting on containers out in, LA Harbor.
So we could say that there's a real case for actually getting these insights and making sure that everybody has access to them. Right?
Yes, it's just connecting the dots, because maybe it's a solution to a number of different problems, and it's very local.
Yeah.
Oh,
sorry, go ahead, Jessica.
One of the ideas, Arnie, I had that might make it more of a possibility of just shift, like public knowledge, and it would be somewhat policy oriented. There's a group of us who've been talking about, and it's something that happened in Sweden, where you can make a sales tax exempt district, because if the materials are reuse oriented, sales tax has already been collected on them. So that would give our customers an 8% savings. And then it would also give the possibility of the publicity and the awareness of these opportunities. So how do you incentivize? When you look at the diagram, maybe residential construction isn't the biggest producer of waste, but when you think about residents as individuals and people who are moving the market, when they can have the savings, it seems like a pretty easy way to incentivize it for the end user.
Yeah, absolutely. That's sounds like a really interesting incentive in Sweden, the sales tax abatement. I do want to give the word briefly to Matt and after that Tina, because they've been having their hands up for a while, but then we'll get back to Arne after that, and Daniel.
Yeah, I'll be very quick. I think that the visibility of what's available is something that Ripley does right now in helping communicate materials that are available for reuse. And we're doing this with San Francisco, where we're building a virtual marketplace where the city of San Francisco is working with Ripley and our ecosystem team to provide access to different construction companies within the city to know about what is being deconstructed, what items are available for resale and reuse, to help fuel that circular economy mindset. And I think you mentioned earlier, Arne, about the construction material and specifically the concrete and recycling of that and breaking that down. And I was thinking to myself, well, that's something that we're kind of looking at with the C&D materials in the San Francisco marketplace, where people are going to be able to take pictures of concrete that will be removed, giving it visibility on people that want to maybe haul it away and grind it up somewhere else, or be able to use it in another area. I just thought, well, that's interesting. It seems to be fairly close to the use case, but that's just something I thought about.
Cool.
Okay, so I think you mentioned I could go next. So let me just quickly say, I do manage all of our sustainability here at the Housing Authority, but in the past year or so, I've started managing all of our vacant unit turns as well. So we have about 10,000 units, and at any given time, I have like 400 units that are vacant and in the process of being renovated for the occupants to move back in. For me, in addition to the, availability of knowledge about what programs are out there, it's a capacity issue. I'm like one single person trying to manage this myself. And on top of that, try to, still think about like, what is our future of like sustainability initiatives? And I mean, at this point, I'm struggling just to keep the vacant units afloat, right? So I don't have any more capacity to think about, any more than like, if I'm pulling out a tub, I gotta just let the contractors do with it what they will, because I don't have the resources on my own to try to figure out what, any kind of like reuse or circular economy for my projects is going to look like. I'm like rapidly scribbling down everyone's like names and resources here. But I still don't know if tomorrow I'm going to have 5 minutes to even think about, who to contact or how to do this. And currently we have an internal policy where we're not like refinishing tubs at all. So I'm like pulling out a lot of like tubs that have just a little crack or a little chip in it that I would like love for someone else to use if they can, especially since there's a shortage of a lot of materials out there. So anyway, just a few things I'm throwing out a lot for that one sticky note.
Yeah, so I see a lot, I actually hear a lot of connections here, or like connections that need to be made. So one thing that we'll do after this session is also send over contact details and of course insights from the sessions towards all of you. So Tina, that maybe if you in your 5 minutes you might just be able to reach out to one of all of you. I know that Daniel also wanted to add something.
Yeah, thanks. A thought I've had is it's curious to me, or maybe not curious, but like you as a business or a resident can get a stormwater credit for diverting rainwater. You can get tax incentives or abatements for solar panel installation or geothermal, but no such similar incentives are in place for composting, which might arguably have a greater climate benefit and circularity benefit to our economy. And so thinking about how we can incentivize this or have some public money help to subsidize or make the cost of those services a little bit more accessible will undoubtedly increase diversion. And there are models out there like stormwater and solar and others.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point also, that, Daniel, like looking at different sectors and seeing what kind of instruments are being used there and see if they're also applicable to, to other sectors. Is there anyone else who'd like to add to the conversation that we haven't heard of yet? Maybe not at this point.
Hello, this is Anand.
Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, this is Anand. Yes, Anand, City of Cleveland. This is really interesting to hear from different perspectives too, from the community, right, in terms of what we're trying to do. We had initially some programs on, deconstruction, but I think you're just trying to get that again, going on a long-term basis. I think that's been the challenge, right, in terms of the additional cost. And I think Chris Cayosto, I think, knows about this, right? I think we were doing some construction work back when, but I think right now the focus seems to be is like, more on demolition, but also just wanted to understand from that, right? I mean, in terms of the embodied carbon and things that we're hearing, right? I think, I mean, certainly when we try to capture all of that information, it's also difficult to put a number. We do a lot of work on our analysis and metrics. I'd also shared an updated metrics number, for instance, for greenhouse gases, for instance, right? But also, I think capturing that and also continuing to, comply with some of the LEED requirements. I know how important it is, but I just want to understand, right? Is it becoming more of a challenge also, right, in terms of the compliance too, especially with the newer versions of LEED? We are hearing that the documentation compliance is becoming more and more challenging. right? So just want to understand that, and are there other pathways? So yeah.
That's a really excellent question. This is something we run into a lot as well, indeed, the compliance with these new benchmarks or metrics. Is there anyone that would like to respond to that question? Is that something that is a real challenge right now? New certifications or metrics? I see some nodding. Chris, do you want to? No? Okay, just affirming. Anyone else like to add to that? Or is that just something that is true? Oh, I see Linda. Oh, sorry, go ahead. Who else was that?
Go ahead. Whoever else is going to speak. Christopher?
Yeah, so I don't know too much about what's available in Ohio and the US as far as carbon markets. But we are starting to work with some folks that are doing blockchain enabled verification of voluntary carbon markets. You don't get as high of a price for that, but you do you can get some return on the investment there. And some of these companies, one that we're talking to is called Regen Network, and there's some others that another one I think is called Dovu, but they do voluntary carbon crediting. So you have to really set up your own methodology for verification of that, but then they will work with professional verifiers to do that. They'll use things like satellite imagery to see the change. And if it's an agricultural project, for instance, you can see that the change over time through satellite imagery. But they also have verifiers that come and verify that, and then you can sell those credits on a distributed ledger, basically like a blockchain type of you can produce NFTs basically for the carbon capture. So that's something that can get anywhere. If there aren't established governmental markets, there are voluntary markets that can be used almost anywhere.
Sort of building on that, we've been involved with the City of Cleveland's Office of Sustainability, along with a few other partners, through the Urban Sustainability Directors Network, looking at like urban initiatives. And so they recently presented their findings showing what 1 ton of food waste composted in Northeast Ohio translates to in terms of greenhouse gas emissions reductions. And so that GHG market opportunity is often very geographically specific. And so that we now have some insight to that, I think can certainly better help convey the value of our products and the proper application of our products regionally. And yeah, so I think that will help to further provide some value behind what it is we're doing.
Great. Thank you for all of that. I think, Divya, I'm looking at you. I think we have a couple of minutes left. Is that true? Yeah, I think she's saying yes. Yes. So what I'd like to do is open the floor for some last comments, or some just seeing if there's anyone who'd like to share something that we haven't discussed so far, thinking about challenges to scaling up certain initiative incentives by local government that work or that might work if they're implemented, and also thinking about what could happen. We've heard blockchain. We know Ripley has a lot of models to get more insights on these material flows. Like, how can we make sure that we link, that we match up construction and demolition, and that we have a place to send these secondary material flows, but maybe not even materials, but also thinking about how we can keep the products and make sure that we have the products, the bathtubs or the showers that we get out of these places, and make sure that these can have a second life. So actually reusing, which is the highest form of giving a product or material a second life. Are there any things that you have heard today that is really worth bringing forward? So really just giving you all the floor to make some final comments or ideas, or just make sure that everything is said. Room closing shortly. So is there any last thoughts? Well, then I would. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking about this based on, I don't know if I can get this in 50 seconds, but thinking about this group in Cleveland, it's all over the country called the Buy Nothing Group. And really, it's, of course, in business, no one's going to really just give stuff away. So, but what they have is the efficiency of posting what they have. And the question is, could you create some kind of online tracking where a Marus Brothers could say, and, oh, CMHA has 10 tubs or 150 tubs. I don't know.
Recording in progress. Fantastic. Okay, so before diving into the questions, just a little bit of setup. I'll be kind of the lead facilitator of this conversation, but Kristen really is the one kind of moving us forward and helping us engage as well. And Kristen, would you want to really give quick high-level context to this little graphic that you're sharing out here, just so people can be familiar with it?
Sure, and I'm gonna just give a quick caveat. This, full disclosure, this is my first time using it, so if this all goes to hell, I apologize in advance, and I'm going to pull up my good old paper and pen and we'll be good to go. But this is a Google Jamboard. I'm going to be using it to capture some of your ideas. Those of you that have participated in in-person events in the past, usually we're giving you a Post-it with a pen or a marker to kind of plop your idea up on a board, and then depending on how much time we have per question, we may try to even group some of the responses into themes, just so that it helps us better report out when we go back to the bigger group, but also as we sort of deep dive and analyze this information for our road mapping process, gives us some good insight. So these numbers mean nothing. It was just I wasn't allowed to put a blank Post-it up. So John, back to you.
Why, thank you, Kristen. So a couple of housekeeping notes before we begin. It's critical, if you can, to please adjust your name. So if you, and put in and add the organization you're with, so we have line of sight to it for everybody to know kind of how to engage better. Again, if you're not sure of how to do that, please look at the three. So when you go up to your picture, there's next to the mute button, there's 3 dots. You click on the 3 dots, and then at the bottom of that, a menu will appear and it says rename. Just go to rename and then just put in your name and then put in the organization you're with, just so we can be grounded a little bit and have an understanding of who's here. And thank you for that. All right. Well, here's how we're going to kick it off today. We have 4 questions to get into. In a perfect world, we would like to have maximum 8 minutes per question and then build in time when we're through to be able to share out to the greater audience with some reflections, which we'll do after the meeting here. Again, some of you may not be directly in the heavy industry or manufacturing area. Some of you are, though, front and center. We really need your voice to come out to help us really ground us on what the limitations are, but also more importantly, also give us some examples of how you think we can push this forward. This is a collective effort. And I want to make very clear that private sector has a huge role in creating the space for us to, I would say, evolve as a city, evolve as a business model through a circular lens. So on that note, question number 1, and here we go. If you have an answer, you want to respond, please put your hand up. Raise your hand, and then I will call out the person and we'll go forward there, okay? So again, first question now. What are you already doing in the realm of sustainability and or decarbonization, pilots, setting targets, reporting, that can inform this transition? So what are you already doing in the realm of sustainability and decarbonizations, pilot, setting targets, reporting? What's your current state? If anyone can share what they're currently doing in this space, that would be great. I see 1. Other hands.
And also feel free to type in the chat box if you'd rather do that. And John, I have a timer going, FYI.
Because you're awesome, Kristen. That's why you're awesome. I'm going to first, I see Marie. Marie, did you put your hand up? Marie, off to you. And then next, Peter Perot will be next. And then Mary. Let's go with those 3. So we're going to go with 1, 2, and then 3 going forward. And I just lost your name. Yeah, Marie, you're up.
All right, so Northeast Ohio Regional Sewer District, we have a sustainability plan. We're working on meeting the goals that were set in that was launched in April 2021. Okay. One of the goals is to reduce waste. We had a successful pilot for reducing waste with our bioincinerator ash. So now all the ash that's produced in our incineration is beneficially reused through the private sector. We tried unsuccessfully to get out a contract for our grit, which is a waste source at the very beginning of our treatment process, which is a little smelly. And we gave out samples. We did everything we could to try to convince someone that, hey, we did some, bench work and we can compost this just, very easily. And so that vacant land, I would love to send tons and tons of this. It's like probably like just under $1 million contract or so to get rid of this in a beneficially reusable way. So that's something that we would love to see.
That's amazing. Thank you for that insight. Really appreciate it. Really good to know. Very cool. Thank you. Peter, I'm going to move and pivot up to you now. Peter, go right ahead, sir.
And I will do my best to keep it to a minute or less. So for those of you that don't know Enel, we are a large multinational energy firm, largest producer of renewable energy in the world. We have set science-based targets for our emissions reductions in the coming 30 years now to align with the climate science. And we have committed to net zero and full decarbonization. We also are looking at the circular economy as a strategic lever for our business in that we are measuring all of the material inflows and outflows of the company globally and have set a target to improve the circularity of our firm in the next 10 years to 86% against the 2015 baseline. And I would add that we have also aligned our corporate purpose and mission with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And so recognizing that notion of inclusivity and equity and the need for social purpose is critical to our mission. And so, science-based targets, net zero commitment, circularity, and social responsibility, all part of our purpose as a company.
Thank you, Peter. And thanks for sharing out. On a note, I just want to highlight that we view in the space that Enel is probably one of those advanced companies in the world, though, of how they put these around. So don't be intimidated by it. I think look at the fact that Peter's here is kind of saying there's some really good things here of how they monetize the transition to sustainability, decarbonization. And I think that's a good roadmap. Of course, they're a wonderful partner too. Mary, I want to come to you now. Lubrizol. Hi, Mary. How are you?
Good. So I work for Lubrizol, which is a specialty chemicals company. We have global facilities, but our headquarters are here in Cleveland. So we're doing several different things. Like in our Wycliffe facility, we have 9 to 12 recycle streams that are being sent out from the facility. Everything from packaging peanuts to, the regular cardboard and glass. We also have some more innovative approaches where we are looking at recycling some of our wastewater into natural gas. So we are selling that to a company that's using an anaerobic process to create gas from our wastewater. And we're also partnering with Avon Lake to look at reusing some of our plastics in asphalt.
Thank you for that, Mary. I think there's some innovations there that I think are extremely relevant, and the anaerobic piece really tickles our fancy a little bit. It'd be great to learn more about what you're doing, and hopefully this gives you some insight to potential innovations for Lubrizol to further explore. So thank you for sharing those. We had Elizabeth. I want to jump in. Elizabeth Biggins, thank you for your point on what you're doing around providing information and expertise around sustainable materials and management to reduce the environmental impact of waste. That's great. I want to turn the floor over now to any other insights that we see on this question. And again, I think I want to highlight here that's important is that look at Cleveland as a hub, like the economic hub of where we can really look at sustainability, decarbonization, the current context for the current state, but also maybe look at it as a broader regional level too. I think anytime you look at the circular economy, to make it legitimate, to make it real, to put economies of scale at place, you have to look at a regional perspective. And so any context where if you're more of a regional player too, it'd be helpful to add those comments here. And if not, that's okay. Well, good. Excellent. Well, then I think we can tie a bow on that one. Thank you for your participation thus far. And Kristen, do you want to move us over to question number 2 now? Here we go. So earlier you saw on the PowerPoint, and Tamara listed a few opportunities, including synergies with local industry, getting insights to resource flows within the sector. From those ones that proposed, and she mentioned one where essentially it was an industrial site, for example, that was sharing all of its energy together to reduce emissions and further be more decarbonized and regulated. Which ones do you think would be more effective and feasible? And are there any opportunities that you saw, for examples, that you could see potentially being applicable to Cleveland? And I think when you're looking at some of this stuff here, really try to think of this in the context of opportunities that you can see, maybe not just from the organization you represent, but also broadly heavy industry manufacturing, and use some of these insights to share out. So again, first hands that are up, you have the floor, and take a second to reflect, because I know that's a loaded question. So take a second to reflect, and if you have any insights to share, that would be great. Again, we're looking at ways, when you're thinking about this, in 2 ways. There's the risk mitigation, and the risk mitigation is related to decarbonization, environmental risk, hazards. The other piece of it, I think, that's really important when you look at this is the opportunity for transformation, and I would say profitability. So there's the point of mitigating risk, but also then sometimes we see in the space companies moving to 100% recycled energy actually save money in the long term. They're optimizing themselves on waste. There's internal operational savings by being sustainable. So maybe start thinking about 2 opportunities within heavy industry and manufacturing to, whether it's directly with your company, related to your company, or sector-wide. Saw a hand go up and then go down. Justin. Hi, Justin.
Hi. Sorry, I've been driving most of the time. That's why I was not able to update my name. And I actually do have to hop off soon for another meeting. But my question's more high level in how many times it was said that they're only limited to the data that they're getting. And how can we, as local data companies, better educate local companies to be smarter with their data? And I guess, how does that fit in? Because it's all high level data that's available, but data is only as smart as the company is, how they're applying their information to their data. And I see that as an opportunity, I guess.
Yeah, that's a big opportunity. I think when you're looking at data collection, I think the answer is what is the right motivations for a company to collect certain data, and then how they can take an advantage of that data itself. So if you look at a company, and I hate to put Peter on the spot here, but like NL, they're using data in a way to make not only a transition in sustainability, decarbonization, but also making revenue. And I think that the quicker we can look at data from the private sector by sharing it pre-competitively, contextualizing that is a way for us to actually then collectively have opportunity. So I think, Justin, your point is a good one and something to explore. I think data is a wonderful opportunity, and I think that's something we can engage on. We'll come back to you on that one. Metabolic, I think, has some ideas around that too. I want to go now quickly to Marie. Marie, I see your hand up. Good seeing you again.
Sure. So I was thinking about there's the Ohio marketplace for trading things you don't want, similar to the Dove deals, right? I wonder if for the private industry, of having a list of just materials that people would love to get rid of, like our grit and probably things that, come out of Lubrizol's processes as well that have value, yet right now it's cheaper to landfill them. And I wonder, every year we submit information to Cuyahoga County Solid Waste District for how much we recycle. Could that be a source of data collection to add in what you would love to, like your wish cycling? What would you love to recycle or reuse beneficially? That would be fantastic.
Excellent. I mean, I think what you're seeing too, what's great, Marie, is you bring up a great point. I think what Cleveland potentially can have an opportunity there for, Marie, is seeing again the positivity, the potential profit and risk mitigation collectively together to put that technology together. Not just keep it sidelined because one company is afraid to share, but saying it's okay to share your sins, so to speak. In fact, we can then work on solutions around that, and everybody has them. That's a really good point. And I think there's some data companies, for example, there's one, Reaply, that does a lot of work on trying to share resources, share material with other companies around as a value proposition. That's a really good insight. And I think that's something that can be further explored. Elizabeth, I want to turn to you, and then I want to go to Peter. Elizabeth, hi.
Hi. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I did want to share that the Ohio EPA does host a site. It's called the Materials Exchange, and that is open to any business in the state of Ohio to list materials that you have that you are looking to match with a partner that might find that as a good end use. So that is available, and I believe it is still free of cost. So, any business can list, I generate, let's say, a plethora of the grit or 55-gallon drums or, used oil of some sort. So that is available currently for folks to take advantage of.
I think, Beth, maybe I have a quick follow-up question to that. Because I know it's been around for a little while. My question would be, how much are folks using it? Because I think what I maybe heard from Marie's point is, yes, I could put stuff out there. It's kind of like a garage sale. Like, I can put my stuff out there, but nobody wants, my old funky lamp. And at the end of the day, it's still sitting in my driveway. So I'm just curious if you've seen, or maybe, if anybody else can weigh in on sort of how effective it is at helping folks connect those. I think when you have a very clear item that's got lots of value like metal, that's not a problem. When you've got some stinky grit that Marie's dealing with, it's a different story. So I'll let folks weigh in. I'll stop there.
Mark Fisher, you may have an answer to this or a response to Kristen here. I'm going to go to you, Mark, and Peter, I'm coming right back to you.
Yeah, just very quickly. It's and I posted it in the chat. It's called the Ohio Materials Marketplace. It's a platform that was developed in partnership with Ohio EPA and the U.S. Business Council for Sustainable Development. A similar marketplace exists in Michigan, and we just launched a pilot in Ontario. And the marketplaces generally are designed to engage industry in trying to assess, audit the ownership of hard to recycle materials, and to connect those owners of that material to others who might see value in that material, and to be able to reuse that material, as opposed to landfill being the first and only option. So the marketplaces in many ways are still kind of new and under development. I think they've been around for the last maybe 2 or 3 years. Ontario, just 1 year. So in some cases, there's still a proof of concept, right? But the framework is there. And I think that, everyone's trying to work through different issues, like, for example, liability and giving up, certain types of hard to recycle materials that, to others, and that ownership transfer and those liability issues. So that's the materials marketplace, and there's still very much a proof of concept, but there is a framework there that people are trying to develop for industry around those hard to recycle materials.
Excellent, Mark. And first of all, I just want to give a shout out to Mark Fisher and the Council of the Great Lakes Region. Mark is a partner of the Circular Cleveland team, and I encourage you to go to the Council of the Great Lakes Region workshop to see some of the fantastic work those folks are doing. Yeah, Mark, I think one thing that, we always have these discussions too, the timing is right, it seems, where private sector is incentivized now to look at waste in a profitability context. And I think, with that, that's kind of a sea change, and potentially that City of Cleveland can leverage, given its background in heavy industry, given also it's literally positioned close to the Great Lakes region, where you see the Great Lakes region moving quicker, faster than other regions in the United States about regional waste sharing and waste hubs. So I think that's something to explore as we move forward. Thank you. I want to go to Peter Perot for some context here. Peter, and you put in the chat about the Marshall Plan. I'm assuming that's what you want to talk about?
Actually, it wasn't. I
Fine.
can if you'd like me
No,
to.
it's quite okay. Go ahead.
I wanted to put something out there for the group to think about, which is really maybe it's a little bit meta, but it's redefining that term waste and really thinking about value. And Mark, you kind of led to this in your comments before. I think that there's a tremendous opportunity for innovation if we kind of change the language from waste and recycling to looking at intrinsic value, right? One of the key principles of circularity is maintaining the value of materials for as long as possible. And the conversation really needs to start at the design phase of things. And so whether you're designing a product or a program or a system, we have to think about the material value that is intrinsic to whatever it is that we're discussing from a physical perspective. And I want to kind of challenge folks to not talk about waste and recycling, but new life cycles in that regenerative nature, right? Because the transfer of value across the value chain is something that becomes very interesting from a business perspective. There are legal implications, there are responsibilities, there's also that, as you mentioned, potential for revenue generation or new job creation or things like that. So I just kind of wanted, like I said, it's a little high level, but I wanted to kind of put it out there to say, let's think a little bit differently about this, because of the fact that the traditional way of thinking is what got us in this mess in the first place. And we need to change that.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you for that. And I want to continue going on and getting some other questions, but those are really good insights. I want to go to the chat and just share out some reflections though, which is something I appreciate. And Stephanie, I really highlight here, which I think is important. When you look at the effort it takes for cities, for example, to have a coordinator working with the private sector to maybe do the coordinations around some of this work. We're seeing that cities right now are in this stage of circular cities. And is there opportunities to have a deeper coordination between the public and the private sector to kind of map these out? I also want to go and highlight Maria here, really putting some good context on how her organization has benefited from government deals and reusing assets. So good stuff. Thank you for the information. We'll consider this moving forward and really good insights. I want to now move on to our next question. So drum roll, please, Kristen, can we go to question number 3? Yes. Now we're going to spend a lot of our times here really focusing on what is holding back our efforts. Let's start getting in right now to this question. What is stopping you or stopping your organization or the industry writ large of executing or adapting sustainability and decarbonization practices specifically in these two sectors of heavy industry and manufacturing? We can have policy, it can be best practices. What are some of those barriers explicitly? Again, use your chat if you want to write those down, and or please raise your hand and we can hear from you what your barriers are that you're challenged with, that you're trying to overcome. And Elizabeth, I don't know if you still have a comment, but I see your hand up, so you can have the floor if you want it.
I just wanted to share that the district does employ a business recycling coordinator, and her responsibilities do include going out to any public or private entity. I mean, we typically go to private entities, and she will conduct a full cycle analysis and provide recommendations as to, how things could be adjusted to eliminate waste as an end product. So we do have that as an offering currently.
That's great. Thank you for the context. And I think that's something to share out to the broader group that infrastructure does to a degree it exists. So thank you for that.
I think, John, I'm going to actually copy this one over to question 2. However, I'm going to also leave it on question 3 because unfortunately, that's just one person and she works very hard and she does awesome stuff. But, there's only so much that one individual can do. So I'm going to kind of keep it on both here.
Excellent. Stephanie, good seeing you. How are you? What insights do you have of the barriers?
From what I'm seeing from a national perspective, that kind of like translates down to the local perspective is anything, general business terms, logistics, costs, communication is huge. There's so much information out there. It's about connecting to the right person and networking and making sure that, communication and identifying what exactly your goals are and what the business should look like in the long term from a financial perspective and connecting those two together, especially with the resources that are available. There's a lot of disconnection because not to specifically cite recycling, but what the infrastructure looks like to be able to create the logistics needed to move these materials around and create better connections with the supply chain. And then also the education that is needed from consumers up to the business and vice versa, learning between, what kind of buzzwords, what are just buzzwords and what can actually be done feasibly within a certain period of time. ESG goals are fantastic, but not a lot of consumers know that you can't just flip the switch and change your material like that. There's a lot of, analysis that goes into that.
And I want to harp on something here. I think you brought up is really important is the transparency piece. I think that, there's a big disconnect on, as you said, communication of what is recycled, what is recyclable, what recycling infrastructure actually exists. I mean, the reality is recycling's been around for 40 years and we still don't have a workable system. The question is, how do we start challenging that and put an innovation system in that's truly transparent, that everyone understands? As a way to eliminate some of those barriers.
Yeah, and it's also something that's been a common theme with the Circular Cleveland project is not just focusing on recycling, but going to the waste diversion and what we're discussing right now. And that's what the consumer is very familiar with recycling, but with so much information out there, they're not really quite sure. So this is an opportunity for businesses to kind of show that there are other options out there to reuse materials and to reduce what we're currently doing.
Great. Thank you for that, Stephanie. I want to pivot a little bit to now the private sector motivation in heavy industry. What are some of the barriers that companies are facing when they know intuitively that we need to be working on decarbonization and sustainability? What's some of those internal barriers that are there? And Peter, I'm going to come to you in a second, maybe to give some best case examples of what you're seeing.
Come to me now or in a second? Sorry.
I'm going to see if anybody else has a hand up before you go. Again, what are some of those barriers that you see internally? Is it something where companies now are just realizing that there is a defined need for decarbonization? Is it now we're going, oh, wait a second, 1.5 degrees Celsius is here, we have to do something? We're going to get into ESG in a second. Do companies not look at understanding yet the profitability possibilities by engaging on these issues? Yes, Peter, I'll go to you now. Go ahead, because you do want to say something. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. And then Marie, you're next. And Stephanie.
From private sector perspective, I think that, the larger companies, they sort of get it. We've been here for a while. We've been reporting to CDP and other types of entities. One of the challenges is really a lack of policy or regulations, right? So to a certain extent, larger companies want that guidance, right? They want to know where the guardrails are. There is an IP perspective to that, but also a lack of standardization. So I'll give you an example from the energy sector. We have the country, the world is working to produce a lot of electric vehicles. Those batteries have a limited lifespan as transportation. However, once they're done with their useful life as transportation, they can be repurposed as stationary energy storage, for example, to provide grid resilience for renewable energy. But there's no standardization around what those performance specs look like. Sure. And the same goes with other types of materials, right? And so I think that, you know, there needs to be some sort of guidelines or guardrails or whatever you want to call it for companies more clearly stated, looking at decarbonization. It's kind of a trickle-down effect, right? And what we're seeing right now is that large corporations such as Enel and others, Microsofts of the world, Walmarts of the world, are looking at their entire footprint, including embodied carbon and scope 3 emissions across the value chain. And now they're starting to trickle down those requirements to their suppliers and to their vendors. And that's where we're actually seeing traction. But I would also just note simply, you know, at a community level or maybe a city level, one of the challenges is simply entropy, right? Yeah. This is how we've done it. This is what we're used to. And so therefore education and engagement with the community on the social side is a critical factor.
Excellent. Thank you, Peter. Really good insights there. I appreciate that. I want to go to Marie and then Mary and then Stephanie. So Marie, you're up.
Sure. So for our grid, for example, we put out that the bid to get it composted, and Kristen was helping me to reach out to as many people as I could to bid on it, and we couldn't find anyone to bid on it. The feedback we got was, if we're going to do this, we need a greater quantity for some, you know, private organization to say yes to it. So like ours was not enough. So I think there's some scale that needs to be worked on in Cleveland.
Scale.
Whether it's our grid or other stuff that's maybe less desirable, that maybe there's a scale and sort of an understanding of maybe some incentives for private entities to, you know, find vacant land, use it for that purpose. You know, there's some complexity there as well, because for some of the stuff you don't want to create an environmental justice problem, you know, with reusing waste. So it's
tricky.
Complicated.
It's complicated,
Yeah.
but put effort into it. And I want to go to Mary, Beth, and then to Stephanie.
John, I'm just going to note that I added in here, you know, to that point, reliability of supply chains as well, because I think it's if you have a one-time item versus, oh, this is going to be a regular stream that you can count on in your business operations. So just a note there.
Great. Thank you for that, Kristen. Mary Beth, you have the floor. And then Stephanie, you're up next. And then we're going to move to the next question. Go ahead.
Just wanted to add on to Peter's comments. So really, when we are looking at sustainability drivers, it is all from what our customers are demanding. So we're seeing more and more that as companies are looking to reduce their footprint, you know, the majority of that is really in their scope 3, where they're purchasing their raw materials. And that's where we're getting the pressure on us from our customers coming and saying, what are you doing to reduce your footprint? So that continued trend to move to science-based targets and focusing on the scope 3, the upstream, is really what gives us the leverage to go to our management and say, hey, we need to look at reducing our waste or look at recyclability, et cetera.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'm going to come back around to you, Mary, for the next question too in a second on ESG, because maybe that's another entry point to engage on too. Stephanie, you had a comment, and then we're going to switch to that next question. Really good engagement, folks. Thank you so much, Stephanie. You have the floor.
I was just going to say this is why, you know, connecting the public sector to the private sector, a huge part of it is the communications and maintaining that relationship with local media as well. Because if it doesn't necessarily get to, you know, where you can have that relationship and you're participating in public sector, but you're able to make sure that, you know, you craft your story in a way that shows that transparency to local media outlets, even national media outlets, that's so important.
100%. Kristen, you had something to say. Sorry. Okay, you came for a second.
Time.
time. Okay. Mark, let's see. We need to move to the next question. Mark, you'll get the floor here on the next question, though, if you can just go ahead, take one, and then let's move to the next question. Go ahead, Mark.
No, I was just going to reinforce that I think when you look at this kind of issue, you have to look at how do you create scale in an enabling policy environment in a way that will, allow some of these transitions to take place. There are certainly some things that you can do and undertake within the city of Cleveland, but there are other things that you might need to do across a broader marketplace, a broader supply chain. And in that regard, when it's cutting across multiple states or cities, what kind of an enabling policy or regulatory environment, the infrastructure is required to support that transition. And I think, just lastly, to Peter's point, it's one thing for multinationals to set these big sustainability requirements and try and drive them through the supply chain. But if the small and medium-sized, tier 1 to tier N companies don't have the education, the capacity to respond to those big commitments, then we're stuck somewhere. So there's a big training and education and capacity building component to this as well.
100%. That's a really good comment. Again, the multinationals have resources and time at their hands to be able to think about these things, while the SMEs are just trying to adapt and keep up. And I think it's really good to be able to put that enabling environment in for them to have the ability to keep up. Really good work. Okay, we're making great progress. Thank you so much for the engagement. We have one more question that we want to engage before we're thrown back into the greater group. And so again, thank you for your time and energy here. Really, really good insights. Kristen, I know you're writing down a wonderful note here, but I would like to now, if you can, take your wonderful board, and thank you, Kristen, for jamming so well in the Jamboard. Final question. We heard last time that ESG reporting in the private sector is having a ripple or having an effect of a way of a push strategy. So again, not just to reference consumers having to push up, saying that we need this from our customers, therefore companies are adapting to meet the needs of customers. But now another metric of environmental, sustainable, and government metrics coming up, where companies are now focusing on quantitative metrics of which investors will then invest more in their company. For example, 50% recycled content by Coca-Cola by 2025, equity in the workplace, gender equity in workplace, now 50-50, which is what Unilever just came out with. Are you seeing right now, or is this something that's interested for you and your company to learn more or engage on ESG as a way to get stakeholder engagement internally? And what would it take for your organization to actually be focusing on ESG more specifically? Floor is yours. It's a big question. So does ESG matters? Yes or no? If so, how can you make it more impactful in your organization? If not, what would it be impactful for your organization? And or if so, then what do you need to make it a reality? Big question there. Or you need more information on ESG and the understanding of it to articulate that to your stakeholders and shareholders, which definitely could be the case. Mark, can you start us off? You have your hand up, and then we can.
Yeah, I'll try
continue.
and start us off. I think there's a lot of work in terms of understanding and awareness that needs to happen, both in terms of ESG, CSR, what it all means for corporate strategies.
Yep.
But at the end of the day, investors, shareholders, stakeholders outside of corporations and then outside of sectors, they're driving the conversation. So either companies are going to respond to it, or they're going to be left behind, or they're going to see major governance shifts because, activists, investors, and shareholders are going to make that change for you, right? So, whether or not a company thinks ESG is important, I think the trend is that it's going to happen, and it's happening at an accelerated pace. So I would just say that, and I think it is having, at least from what I can see with companies in the Great Lakes, it is having a positive impact on how companies approach some of these issues. The flip side is that, and you mentioned recycled content, it's great that major brands are setting recycled content commitments. The challenge that we see in the Great Lakes, and you know this, John, is that there's a disconnect between those commitments and the available supply, right? Even in the Great Lakes, we know that we're sending volumes of material to landfills. We know the volumes of materials getting lost to the environment in the Great Lakes. And so the collection, processing, the policy framework is misaligned in terms of being able to collect that value, process it, and return it in order to meet some of those commitments. That's happening at the Great Lakes. And so there are major gaps, in North America and the world in terms of meeting those commitments and the supply. There's a disconnect there. So if we want those commitments to be successful, we need to back that out and saying, okay, well, what do we need to change in terms of that infrastructure, that policy, that consumer engagement that allows you to capture that supply and that value? If we can't square that circle, we're not going to meet those commitments.
Thank you, Mark. Really good points there. Thanks for bringing that to the light. Mary Beth, you're up next, and then Marie, you can take us home. Mary Beth. Quick note, 30 seconds if you can, and then Marie, 30 seconds, and then Kristen, thank you for the engagement you're sharing out. Go, 30 seconds, Mary Beth.
Yeah, so I think the ESG evolution at our company was first doing reporting. Then it was using that opportunity to promote our products in the handprint, how we can reduce the footprint of our customers. Then it moved into trying to reduce our own scope 1 and scope 2. And now it's just starting at the scope 3. But scope 3 is kind of an area we're still needing to focus on.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that out. Maybe we'll send some resources along the way too, but thank you for engagement. Marie, sorry, go ahead.
Investors asking, but also bond rating agencies. So we're asked about that. So maybe some education to those smaller companies about how to report on it in a way that's not crazy, because other utilities report on it and some actually have had to stop because it's too.
Wow. I'm overclamped. Talk amongst yourselves. Have a break for a second. Talk about.
Crush it on site and then it's able to be reused. Also, I guess I didn't use my Jamboard as effectively as I should have, but there was also talk about tax credits. This is something that they're doing in New York for people who are diverting waste, because we want to put in incentives for diverting waste from the landfill. There was also talk about we need storage space for some of these materials. And then we also need better communication to know what materials are available for people who are looking to reuse materials. Another point that was also made was that we just don't have the capacity. An example was given from CMHA where they have materials and resources available, but they don't have the time to let the community know. And I'll turn it back to Tamara and see if there were other things you captured.
No, I think that's a really great summary, Kathy. Like one thing that I really loved about this session is that it seemed like there were a lot of connections. So I really hope that we found some new opportunities together. And also like to that note, and I'm sure John, you'll dive into that more, is that we'll share all these insights. And Daniel has been sitting next to me, like typing a lot of notes as well on top of what Kathy already did. So we really captured everything, I think. So we'll share that so that we can actually keep this going, because I think there's a lot there. John, back to you, I think.
Boy, so we just had some reflections. So thank you, everyone. Again, thank you for the whirlwind adventure. I think we're on our way now to close ourselves out and look forward. So Divya, I'm going to give the floor to you now. Floor is yours. Take it over, please. Take us home.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody here in this. I was able to float around in these sessions and really feel wonderful about how much the depth of the conversation was. And I really want to thank you for coming out here, putting yourself out there and making those connections today and seeing what really can come out of it. You really embodied some of those things that we asked you to sort of bring to the session today. So thank you very much for bringing your full self. And really, I think I'm super excited to see what the next steps are going to be. And I'm going to share that with you. Next slide, please, John. So just to give you a timeline, so we all have a context of where we're working, how we can sort of continue to work from where we are. Well, Cleveland, we're some of you have already heard, we're in the process of joining the Ellen MacArthur Foundation Network. They are a great resource for Cleveland. Once we are a part of the network, their support comes to us in so many ways, including the support that we have from Pixera Global and Metabolic. So that's exciting for us. And the roadmap process is going well, and into January we'll have something that will not be sitting on the shelf, but something that we can all take and act on in our own spheres of influence, which we have, I think we've seen a lot of here. And then we will, the West Side Market is going to have a composting process. I mean, it will be a transparent RFP process. We've started. Again, our ambassadors are onboarded. We have racial equity trainings on. We've gone ahead with those as we sort of move forward with bringing more people transitioning into a working group, which we will do in year 2. We'll have more of those workshops. In the roadmap process, we have a good scan. Upcoming will be how this meeting today is informing us to what that implementation is going to look like. On the grant side, we've had 1 round of Neighborhood Connections community, Circular Cleveland community grants, 14 grantees I mentioned on the front end. Great projects. They will close out their projects towards the end of the year, and we're looking forward to their reporting out. We've done 2 exchanges, briefly, one learning from Toronto about how they've been taking over, how they've been enacting the Circular Cleveland initiative Circular Toronto initiative as a city leading that. We've also learned from other groups, but then we have going to what are we looking forward to? Next year, we are going to go ahead and come together again. All of us who are coming together on these stakeholder engagements, we want to keep you engaged as this becomes an implementable program into a working group that we'll get together. Look forward to more workshops, look forward to more granting sessions. Again, we'll start to talk about how these incentives through the economic development department's going to percolate. It's with us here to sort of think of how that's going to impact Cleveland and what we want that to look like. So, and then we'll close out year 3 with, keeping this initiative going. With that, next slide, please. What we are looking for so far, our engagements, what we're looking for so far. Thank you again, really, for coming today. And our next, we'll convene again on November 17th for our next set of workshops. In the meanwhile, definitely we will be reaching out to some of you to gain deeper insights, learn more from what you're doing, how we can build that going forward. We will also make sure to send out to you all the information that we've gleaned. Our final workshop will be in January. When we convene in November, we'll have some dates for you to talk about. But with that, I really want to thank everyone once again for really your full participation here.
Yay. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you all for engagement. And we did make time. So we're going to stay on board here for any questions and answers. Questions you have, we'll try to answer or just to engage otherwise. But again, we want to thank you for your time. Thank you for spending your morning with us, and look forward to next steps. So thank you, and we'll stay on for a little bit. Or if you want to have any questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat or off mute and ask now. Some really good stuff coming out. Oh, special shout out, City of Cleveland next week. The upcoming Sustainable Cleveland Summit is happening. Please try to get there. I know the team has been working really diligently to put something fantastic together for you folks. So sign up and give it a try if you have the time. And questions are coming through the chat, so I think we can jump into that. So let's look at, first of all, Anand from the City of Cleveland. Review, update the GHG emissions data in the slides if possible. Yes, Tamara, we'll
absolutely.
come back to that one.
Yes.
Absolutely. Mary Beth, thank you. Peter, thank you for your engagement as usual. Thank you, everyone.
Definitely a shout out to all those stakeholders who came from outside to join us and sort of bring some resources to Cleveland, information to Cleveland. Thank you, everybody.
To our Circular Cleveland team, It looks like most of you were able to access the Jamboard, right?
Well, I will possibly.
Okay. Well, I guess it's less critical for the jamming piece as much as it is for just viewing and capturing the info. So, so you guys all have it. That's I guess the beauty of this now. I don't have to type up notes and send them to you.
Oh, well done, multitasking efficiently.
So I think, Kathy, like we have notes from your Jamboard, and then Daniel also typed with. So we'll share these with the full group as well.
Before we continue going down particular Circular Cleveland teams, we have some audience members here. So hi, Mary Beth. Hi, Cherie. Hi, Stephanie. Hi, I think we have Jess from the Rebuilders Exchange. Christopher, any comments or questions? Peter, any insights you want to share? Any questions you have for us? We'd love to make the most of your time while you're with us still.
Sure. I'm going to lead with a shameless plug for Pixar Global, Circular Cleveland, and the Green Ribbon Commission. We will all be participating on a panel discussion with the Boston Green Ribbon Commission next month. And so for anyone who's interested, please just, let your interest be known. I believe the date, Divya, is it the 15th of November? But we're going to have perspectives from the sustainable finance sector, BNP Paribas, Arab with Built Environment. Divya will be participating. Pixar Global will be moderating. And we're talking about decarbonization plans for cities as well as resiliency. So there should be some. Yeah, I'm super excited for that discussion. It's going to be fantastic.
I can't tell. I don't see it coming out of you. Somebody's energy matches mine and actually surpasses me sometimes. Thank you, Peter. That's awesome. That's so cool. We'll be there. That's great. Anybody else from the team? Stephanie, thanks for staying on and joining. Jess, I see you still around. Stephanie is going to be joining us, helping us facilitate the next session for the next working group. So thank you for taking your time to do that, Stephanie. Really excited to work with you on that.
Thank you. This has really been really insightful. I'm a journalist with Waste 360. So I work a lot with, both the private and public sector and telling these stories. So it's really interesting to see, where this is going to go in terms of the roadmap in the future.
Yeah, right. So it's all kind of like feels like new days a little bit. So we'll see. Hey, Jess.
Hey, I think that it was, I thank Stephanie for telling the story, because a lot of it has to do with storytelling and connecting, getting the language accessible and available to the masses. So thank you, Stephanie, for storytelling and for putting this all together for us. I appreciate you taking the time and energy, and Divya for making the invitation so clear.
Well, and you were listed, Jess, as in the feedback as, Rebuilders Exchange. You were, how's circularity happening in Cleveland? You're on the list of everybody knowing. So kudos to you for being in the space already before others are there. You're awesome. That's great.
Yeah, it's really a team effort it's a collaboration between the community, our vendors who make it accessible, our customers who purchase it, and then our team who, moves doors every day. So it's an awesome.
So cool.
To be part of.
So cool. Tamara, you have something to say?
No, I think it was I always have something to say, but I think this was a really great session. Of course, we look at a lot of data, and we've worked in a lot of European contexts, and it's always great for us to really see what is happening in cities like Cleveland, because I think there's a lot of cross-pollination possible where we learn from each other, the Europeans and and cities like Cleveland. And I think it's really awesome to see how much is happening. And I think, to be quite frank, I think there's lots more movement from the public, from the community, lots more different stakeholders collaborating on these different projects within the built environment than I see in Amsterdam. So that's really exciting for us. I definitely heard a couple of really great endeavors today. So that's I'm just excited for the next steps as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that came out that resonated, which I think we really need to look at, especially when we start navigating ESG and some of these other things, is put into play for the small and medium-sized enterprises that dominate the Cleveland scene, kind of a roadmap of some of the best practices we're seeing around sustainability and carbonization from the private sector. I can't thank enough Peter and NL North America for being here and just sharing globally why it's important to them as a benchmark. And I think we need to kind of bring those best practices in to be more tangible for the local folks to go, oh, wait a second, to get out ahead of it a little bit. I think just that really resonated with me of being something that we should be as a resource.
I appreciate that, John. If I can just add in, since we've got some of the key stakeholders here, the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration has the Build Back Better funding, which is literally hundreds of millions of dollars that they want to allocate by like March of next year, I think it is. And so I know in our breakout session, we referenced the Marshall Plan for Middle America. For anyone who needs to get connected to Grant Irvin in the city of Pittsburgh or Resilient Cities Catalyst, you know, we're all in small circles really in this sort of sustainability circular economy space. But I'm happy to connect dots whenever I can. And
thank you.
You know, there's opportunity there to develop a roadmap, and then that funding goes towards implementation. And so the city doesn't have to do it on its own. The community partners don't have to do it on its own. And the private sector certainly wants to come to the table and be a part of that. So I just kind of remind everybody of that, and I'm happy to try to dig up a link if needed, or people can follow up with me offline, whatever else. But great opportunity.
Oh, we're dialed in with you, Peter.
You've been a great resource, and you've been a great partner in this process. I really want to thank you for bringing those connections out there to us. And sort of Jessica and I, definitely there is a project that Irvin mentioned about the construction hub that they've been doing in partnership with University of Pittsburgh as well, that will sort of resonate with the work that you're doing, and it's good partnership. And I'm glad that the County Land Bank was here in this conversation today. So
yay.
Thank you, Peter. Really, thank you so much for bringing that connection for us, so we can begin to learn to replicate some of those things here and build a larger network.
Yeah,
Mark.
Absolutely.
Mark, I saw your hand up.
Yeah, no, I was just going to reinforce what Peter said about the Build Back Better programming through the EDA. The challenge, and we've been trying to think about how we can create a sort of a multi-state, multi-city kind of initiative. The challenge is that I think the initial applications are due like sometime like in mid-October, end of October. So it's like a crazy timeline to even think about building a new collaboration, but we certainly see value in trying to do that, and you know, trying to bring together private sector, public sector partners in you know, shaping what a regional initiative could look like, because there is, as Peter said, there's lots of money there, but it's trying to figure out how to meet that incredible timeline.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mark. All right. Well, kiddos, people, stakeholders, as Tamara called one of our colleagues, the stakeholder whisperer. I think we are calling it a day now until our next meeting. And so I know we have one this afternoon, but the City of Cleveland, Divya, Kristen, Kathy, thank you so much for the organization. Everyone, thank you for the engagement. Tamara, the data, and Daniel, my God, amazing insights that you shared. And look forward to reconvening with you a little bit later today at 2:30 Eastern time for our pre-check-in before we go live at 3. So
before we separate, am I fine